Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed, and today we're going to be starting our new wave of videos relating to the Space Marines biology. Now today is just going to be a basic overview of the Space Marines biology, leading up to the more complicated videos relating to specific organs within the Space Marine's body. Now to start, we're going to be talking about the Space Marine gene seed, as that is the main difference between a Space Marine and a normal human being. Now the gene seed is a term given to the unique genetic materials used to transform a person into a Space Marine. The stability of a gene seed, because of its genetic variation, varies from chapter to chapter, with some gene seeds being very stable, and some gene seeds being less than stable, as I will mention later. The Ultramarine Space Marine chapter are considered to have the most stable gene seed, and hence why they have the largest number of second founding and other chapters compared to the rest of the Space Marine chapters. Now the origins of the Space Marine gene seed are in the far past of the Imperium, right when the Emperor came to power on Earth. Now the Emperor had genetically altered warriors prior to the unification of Terra. Although they were less powerful than a Space Marine, it was in this period the ability to alter an established person's DNA was perfected. Cells, called gene seeds, were isolated and modified, and were eventually used to create new organs which could be implanted into a prospective candidate. The development of these organs took many centuries, and the research is in fact an offshoot of the Primarch project. The Primarchs were almost godlike beings whose powers were greater than that of a regular Space Marine. Genetic tissue was taken from each of the unborn Primarchs and used to create a gene seed of the original 20 Space Marine legions. This explains why each chapter inherits some traits from an individual Primarch. Now the events of the Horus Heresy actually revealed weaknesses within a Space Marine's gene seed, as can be seen from the fact that over half the Space Marine legions turned against the Emperor and sided with Horus. Now this is put down to the fact that Space Marines required rapid reproduction of gene seeds, and the flawed techniques used to reproduce them, leading to a breakdown in the original DNA structure created by the Emperor. After the heresy, genetic banks were established on Terra to produce and store more Space Marine gene seeds. These stores provided all genetic material for new Space Marine chapters, and to prevent cross-contamination, genetic stocks of gene seed from individual legions are used and isolated. Thus, a Space Marine chapter will only receive specific gene seed relating to a specific Primarch. Now, after the Horus Heresy, the Space Marine legions were broken down into smaller chapters, as I have probably alluded to before in these videos. The genetic materials of some chapters were considered more pure than others, and thus, at the time of the 41st millennium, over half of the known 1,000 chapters are descended from the Ultramarine's gene stock. A gene seed is also far from perfect. A Space Marine's gene seed may be rendered useless by exposure to high levels of radiation. Also, over time, a chapter's gene seed has been seen to change through effective genetic mutation. This leads to specific implants becoming corrupted, producing new effects in Marines, or becoming useless altogether. A corruption in the chapter's genetic material can lead to a chapter's extinction. This is why gene seed must be constantly monitored for major mutations by the Adeptus Mechanicus. Each chapter is obliged to send 5% of its genetic material to the priests of Mars. The first purpose for this is that the Adeptus Mechanicus can monitor the health of each Space Marine chapter. Secondly, it enables the Adeptus Mechanicus to store the gene seed with the view of founding a new chapter in the event that the original chapter was wiped out in battle. Just a quick note, the Grey Knights chapter are actually an unusual chapter because the source of their gene seed is unknown, and we do not know if it relates to a specific Primarch, or if it in fact is derived from the Emperor's own DNA. We do not know this. Another note is that the 21st founding of Space Marine chapters, also known as the Cursed Founding, is noted because its focus was in perfecting and removing the deficiencies in flawed gene seeds. Unfortunately, many of the chapters created at this time have developed genetic idiosyncrasies, mutations that strain the tolerance of the Inquisition and threaten these chapters' survival. Now I'm going to move on to talk quickly about the implantation and reproduction of a Space Marine's gene seed. Now the gene seed of a chapter is precious, and it's only given to the most worthy candidates. Each chapter has its own traditions and procedures for selection of recruits, but are all subject to rigorous testing and genetic screening before receiving a new gene seed implant. The reproduction of a gene seed is possible through the progenoid gland, an implant whose sole purpose is the replication of Space Marine gene seed. A mature gland can be removed by an apothecary, and new organs artificially cultivated from them. This is the only source of new implants, so a chapter must depend on its Marines to create other Marines. Apothecaries can remove progenoids after they have matured, or if a Marine has died in combat. I will actually be covering implantation procedure in an upcoming video, but right now all you need to know is that they can be reproduced through these methods. I'm also now going to mention the 19 new organs that are implanted into Space Marines in their creation. Some of these organs only work properly, or at all, in the presence of the other implants. Therefore, the removal, mutation, or failure of one organ can affect the precise functioning of all of the Space Marines implants. I'm just going to mention them in list format now, and we can move on to talking about them specifically in my next video. So the Space Marine organs, by number, are 1. The secondary heart, 2. The os modular, 3. The biscopia, 4. The har masterman, 5. The Larraman's organ. 6. The catalepsion node. 7. The preomore. 8. The omophaga. 9. The multilung. 10. The oculobe. 11. The Lyman's ear. 12. The Susan membrane. 13. The melanchromatic organ. 14. The oolitic kidney. 15. The neuroglottis. 16. The mucranoid. 17. The Batcher's gland. 18. The progenoids. And 19. The black carapace. Now these will all be mentioned in how they are implanted and what they do in my next video, but just for now know that these are the number of organs that a Space Marine has to have in them in order for them to function as a full Space Marine. I'm also now going to mention a few of the known gene seed flaws in the chapters of the Imperium, just so you know a little bit before we move on to them in the specific chapter videos later on. So, chapters with known gene seed flaws are firstly the Blood Angels. Now, they have something known as the Black Rage and the Red Thirst, which is actually directly from their Primarch. This isn't a mutation, this has always existed in their gene seed, although we will discuss that more in their video. And the Imperial Fists are actually missing the Batcher's gland in the Susan membrane, although we don't quite know why that is. Space Wolves actually have enlarged canine teeth and have the Mark of the Wolfen, which is a serious mutation which if the Inquisition knew, they would be in a lot of trouble, but we will talk about that in their own video. The Raven Guard are actually missing the Macranoid and the Batcher's gland. This leads to pale skin and dark eyes, and is actually a result of manipulation by Corax, their Primarch, although I'll talk about that again in their own video. The Salamanders have onyx black skin, which is very, very dark for those who don't know what onyx is. They have bright red eyes. This is caused by a malfunctioning melanchrome gland. Now the Blood Drinkers chapter have a blood drinking ritual and literally have a bloodlust due to an unknown mutation, and although I'm not going to be doing a specific video about that chapter, if you request it we can go into it later on. The Black Dragons, which are actually quite a popular non-codex chapter, have bony mutations on their forehead, elbows and forearms caused by a malfunctioning osmodular zygote. And the Exocorators have something called the Darkness. Again, they are not a specific chapter I'm going to be doing a video on, but if you do want more details, don't hesitate to contact me. So that is everything I'm going to talk about today relating to Space Marines biology. We're going to move on in our next video to talking a little bit more about their implantation techniques, and we are also going to be starting up a few chapter videos in the next few weeks, so please post below what specific chapter you want to see first. Okay then, I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and see you next time on the Vaults of Terra.